What's good, family? It's your boy right there. Right now, I'm gonna get up into some big Lilmeech. What I like to do is, I'm gonna just give my reaction to certain things. So, without further ado, let's just get to it. I'm gonna say this. That right there is just not no coincidence. All the people around Floyd, Rick, Lilmeech, what they playing, I think, a big reach, like that'd be a hell of a coincidence if it was. You know, it's like damn, they spin that 50 face hard, especially with Meech. Man, but the super is he's probably just like super insulted. You probably don't feel it, just super insulted. Like, man, hold that energy at when he was trying to, badge your way. You know, what was that energy at when he was hollering at me? Why you ain't had that energy to holler at Buddy? Let Buddy put you on to do whatever you're gonna do and all this and all that. Body language speaks a lot too. You know, you just gotta put yourself in the shoes, you feel me? Of both people, all the people, or usually meet you trying to get straight, you know, you hollering at these people, they ain't even no place that you holler at this dude, always from over on this side, and he help you out and put you on, and then at the end, after all this, you did get out and get some money from him or how your situation may go, and then you just flex your hard on like, I don't know what the situation was. I wonder why, like, we changed it, go all that big for the month, just, shoot down that apple first. It's probably more than what it is, Maybe Rick, maybe I ain't gonna get some money from me, but like that, maybe it'll take money. At all, you never know. But yeah, this is a big flex. This is a big flex that look. Last night we balled my bro Money Mayweather. You already know how we gonna do it, but look, that car show, Get your tickets right now, man. The biggest in the world gonna be there. The collection will be there. The vibes gonna be there. The food gonna be there. The hustlers gonna be there. The money gonna be there. Trust me when I tell you this. I'm gonna film that off that phone, but I'm just putting it on my story as well. Just showing love. June 7th, 10 p.m. Lincoln Park, Waterloo Days. What's happening? Morning Glory, everybody that's watching. It's the biggest boss. We staying connected with all the real ones. One time for all the hustlers, wherever you at. If you hustling, you get into it. If you online, become a brand ambassador. Sit yourself at the table. Help build something. Help build it. Build it. Build it.
Let me show you why I stopped paying for all my other sample libraries. This is Arcade.
Like that's crazy. If you, everybody got damn near everybody got a phone now. Platform on it, you feel get registered to. You know? So damn, so you go back and say, yo, what's up with a BMF3? Coming at me like I'm a goofy after you just did major flex something. Like you know how small this world is, bro. Like, come on, man. And then they get back to me, I'm looking like basically, you feel me? Like fuck you in my face, that's what it is, you feel me? Then you tell me like you don't do things, that shit count. The messed up part is like Cherry and all them, you feel me, all the other people in the cast, they families, you feel me, who's depending on that, you feel me, and making money for themselves, you know, who's trying to carve out a way up to act. And I feel bad for them. Them people I feel bad for. You feel me? I feel also bad for Lilmeech in the sense that it's like low key, if they ain't fuck with you then, if they ain't fucking with you now, they just fucking with you because you're dead home and on some real shit. It's like, bro, they using you and shit. You can't see that shit. You know, these niggas, they Floydd, you know, Ross, you know, they got beef with 50, bro. You know, they gonna use you as a pawn in the game, and you can let them do that shit, bro. Like, you know, yeah, this shit, like, and now this shit just, it's like this shit getting out of hand, you know. But I want to just go down this rabbit hole for a little bit with y'all, so that would.
That set out a uniform policy for sentencing individuals and organizations convicted of felonies and serious Class A misdemeanors in the United States federal court system.
If a man really hated ads, here's what he would do. Day 1, he would install Pi on his computer without spending a dime because it's 100% free. Day 2.
Now, let's continue. Court, you know that's why I took the job. However, the court must impose a sentence of imprisonment on count 3 of at least 20 years. Mr. Feinberg, yes. The court, that's a provision of the agreement, right? Mr. Feinberg, yes. The defendant on both counts. The court, well, I understand, but there is a provision that I have to give you at least 20 years. The defendant, right? The court,
And as y'all can see, for those who can't see, no offense, this is supposed to be the record. You feel me? Right here, like proof of each cooperation. You feel me? And it's nothing. When you mess with 50 Cent, bro, you gotta know, like, buddy ass, it ain't gonna be just all buddy. It could be that, but understand, bro been through some shit, so bro, we already got it missing. You feel me? And all that little slight shit, he probably take that shit, you know, tally that shit, put that shit, you feel me? Compartmentalize it up in the back of his mind somewhere. And then one day when that shit leaves, you come with that shit like boom. You feel me? It be damn near like be a friend, but it's really from an all business perspective. You feel me? Like respectfully. But some real shit like buddy ass ain't shit to play with if you want some whole other shit. You feel me? You ain't up. If you check you want some up. And you go for some up shit. Like buddy been through that shit so many times in his life though. At this point, I bet every motherfucker he probably come to counter with, he just expecting motherfuckers to do it again and what were they gonna do? Like some real shit. But yeah, let's get back to it.
And if I don't, the government can withdraw from this deal? The defendant. Right. Now, right here, the judge has documented another portion of Meech's plea agreement with the government. So we now know that based on this provision that Meech has, his guideline range is 30 to life. And there is an agreement with the government that the judge must give him at least 20 years or the government can back out. Let's continue. The court. Okay, when you go to prison, after you get out, there's a period of supervised release. The defendant, yes. The court, right? The defendant, yes. There is also a $200 special assessment, right? The defendant, yes. And I can impose a fine on either count up to 250,000, right? The defendant, yes. And if I let you withdraw your plea for any reason, they can use these statements made here today against you, right? The defendant, I guess, yes. The court, okay. And there is also a forfeiture, but there is nothing specific set forth in the forfeiture, right? The defendant, right. And if I accept this agreement and we go forward, any other charges against you are dismissed, right? The defendant, yes. And if we don't exceed what the agreement says, you have no right to appeal, right? The defendant, right. And if it should turn out that your criminal history is different than that which you have all agreed upon, I can go higher, right? But you can't get out of it. Here, the judge is informing Meech that if some new information comes out, or if he leaves something out when assisting the probation officer, that the judge can go higher than what the agreed upon max is. Meech would expose that max with his reaction. The defendant, go higher than what? 30? The court, yeah. I don't know how I can go higher because I think that there's a provision, is there not? Mr. Leibson, who was the other prosecuting attorney, would chime in and say, there is a standard provision, but it's essentially moot. If you don't know what the word moot means in a court of law, an issue or case being moot means that it has lost its practical significance because the underlying controversy has been resolved one way or another. So now that we have reviewed the transcripts of the plea hearing, these are the things that we know from Meech's own acknowledgement. Based on his criminal history points and relevant conduct, his guideline range was 30 to life.
Reality check. You spend
Like I say, man, 50 he a clever guy, man. If that man messing with you, believe that man know a hell of a lot. Like he trying to do a TV show. I don't believe that he would have just did a TV show without looking at the documents and everything from the court case that the clerk had put up into the system. She or he just done a great job. Like, you know, you can't tell me he just know him out. But still, not 50. Not 50.
Guilty, and in exchange, the court would not be able to give him less than 20 years, but the government would agree to seek no more than 30 years. We also learned that there is a provision that would allow for Meech to get more than 30 years, but based on his agreement, that provision was moot. Now let's break down what this means. A guidelines range of 30 to life means Meech can get no less than 30 years if convicted. By entering into this plea agreement, Meech was turning his minimum of 30 years into his maximum and lowering his minimum down to 20 years. This signifies that Meech made an agreement with the government for a downward departure. If you don't know what a downward departure is, a downward departure is when the federal judge imposes a defendant a sentence that is lower than the minimum sentence that was suggested by the sentencing guidelines. Now, not every downward departure is bad. As I just mentioned, it usually happens when a judge deviates from the guidelines because you may have been less involved than others or may have some special circumstances like a learning disability or something. The judge might just feel the sentence is too steep, but the government agreeing to a downward departure, signifies that a defendant has cooperated or assisted them in some way. Before we move forward, I want to demonstrate to you all the types of games that the courts play. If you look at Meech's actual plea agreement on paper, you will see that there is a difference in the terms that are shown and the terms that were mentioned in the courtroom. The plea agreement actually includes a clause that said it will be void if not signed by March 6th of 2007, but it shows that Meech didn't sign it until November 14th of 2007. So the actual plea agreement that you can go look up on the docket is not a true representation of the terms that were presented in the courtroom that day. In fact, if you look at the date of the actual plea hearing, it was 5 days later on November 19th, 2007. They made several oral amendments to the agreement, which they were entitled to do so legally. But by doing it this way, they also ensured that the true details of the agreement would not be in the actual copy that would show up on the docket for the public to view. That still leaves the question of why would the government agree to a downward departure? To find this information out, we have to look at Meech's sentencing hearing. In a sentencing hearing, both parties get to present evidence. Usually, the government will argue why you should get a higher sentence, presenting what we call aggravating factors. On the other hand, the defense will argue for a lower sentence, presenting what we call mitigating factors. In this instance, the government presented no aggravating factors and simply asked that the defendant be placed near his family in Atlanta. In mitigation, the defense would simply argue that Meech was responsible for getting his brother Terry to plead guilty and that he should get credit for that. The judge would ask, "Are you saying that the government should make a motion for substantial assistance?" To which he responded, "No. Of course, we've seen all along the lengths his attorney has gone through to make sure that no evidence of his cooperating shows up on the paperwork. So his quick denial was expected, but it was still almost like the judge was saying, are you saying that this deal isn't good enough?" Some of you may be sitting here questioning why would Meech's attorney feel like he should get a deal for getting his brother to plead out? Well, let's break it down. According to the investigation in this case, Meech and Terry were identified as the two heads of this organization. During Meech's plea hearing, not only did he admit to his role, but he also agreed to admit he supervised 5 people named in the conspiracy and that at least 3 transactions he was directly involved in. This meant that 5 people who were under Meech, who had not yet taken plea deals, were at risk of having evidence presented that they were identified by Meech if they went to trial. Among those people who were still waiting to go to trial at the time were Meech's brother Terry, Wayne Joyner, Brian Garrett, and Kim Williams. Based on Meech's deal, if T went to trial, Meech's word could be used against his brother and others. The only way to avoid that was to convince his brother Terry,
So yeah, just looking at this
Wayne Joyner,
like why?
Brian Garrett, and Kim Williams. Based on Meech's deal,
Say, tell me what you did. Tell me what you did. I brought a couple vehicles to court. Well, you took drugs, seized. Yeah. Yes. You know, body sale, five, baby, last two, let's say versus Demetrius. Anyway, this page two, I guess. So, that's what
and Kim Williams. Based on Meech's deal, if T went to trial,
say in immigration court, just so we are clear, Mr. Fendi, what, what, that in mind, with that in mind, Your Honor, we have made, we made agreements with the court and the U.S. Attorney Office and arrangements and opportunities for Demetrius members. Yes, that's the name. I'm saying like, kind of sound like shit, yeah. But anyway, to be able to meet with his brothers Terry to let him know that he, even though they hadn't communicated in years, that he intended to in a guilty plea, and he was advising his brother to do the same, and he will address the court. He felt it was time to bring the case to a clean and to draw a conclusion. So many people who have been damaged by integrity.
Trial, Meech's word could be used against his brother and others. The only way to avoid that was to convince T himself to take a plea deal. By pleading out, T would essentially be incriminating his connect, admitting that whatever they had against him, connecting him to T, was valid. And Meech's lawyer wanted Meech to get credit for all of that.
Everyone knows you need a lawyer after a car accident and injury. But what if I told
I want to go back so I can see what that say. I cannot tell you with certainty that that leader is what influenced Mr. Floyd, Mr. Terry Floyd. I do not know that once Demetrius Floyd entered his plea that I think within 48 hours Terry Floyd was who was apparently going to go to the trial came before the enter his plea the next day. And then we feel once the real trial of Demetrius
Was valid. And Meech's lawyer wanted Meech to get credit for all of that. The era in which Big Meech took his plea represents a change of times. Where it was once frowned upon to take a plea deal in conspiracy cases, more and more people started to do it under the premise that they were just taking their own weight. And the government was working diligently to find ways to conceal the fact that this meant they were cooperating, not just to protect them.
Yeah, it was a different time, so it was a whole different time, different era. You know, these phones went out, it was a whole different life, like for real. And back then, people probably like they really did feel like you feel me. They got into something they just gonna take their weight and they they ain't do nothing. It was different how it's seeing now when like you seeing it, it's basically like damn, like throwing people under the bus or this, that, or other, or whatever. It's like it's different, but yeah, like you said, it was a way different era.
But also to keep
Like it's gonna be one in the next 10, 15, 20 years. It's gonna be a whole different era. People gonna be looking at things differently. Yeah, it's always like that.
more people willing to do so. How could one argue that it was wrong when you had certified street bosses like Big Meech doing it and being allowed to walk the yard of the USP compound openly? See, most people look at plea deals and the first thing they look for in terms of cooperation are Rule 35 motions or 5K1 motions. Those are not the only methods of being rewarded for cooperating. One non traditional way of rewarding cooperation is a Rule 11 C1C plea agreement. Many attorneys recognize and practice this method because it allows them to negotiate a reward with the government. This is a safer method for clients than simply cooperating and leaving it up to the judge whether they did enough to get a Rule 35 or 5K1 motion. And yes, Big Meech did have a Rule 11 C1C plea agreement. Even more telling of the fact that Meech had negotiated a downward departure was the fact that in his pro se 2255 motion filed in 2009, he himself stated that his lawyer had promised him that he would only get 20 years. Meech also took this opportunity to pretty much blame everything that was going on his brother, denying any involvement and saying motion filed in 2009, he himself stated that his lawyer
Only because of bad advice from his lawyers did the plenary plead guilty. Mental stress and not being able to see the sun or the sky was taking a toll on him and worked well to break him. But more than that, not being able to touch his kids was killing him from the inside. Plenary lawyer promised him that he would only get 20 years during the plenary plea hearing. It's because apparently that Flannery, his lawyer, had lied to him, and the courts were going to give him 30 years instead of 20. Several times during this questioning by the judge, Flannery attempted to clear this up, but he got whispers from his lawyer stating he would get 20 years. Please do not make it seem. Flannery never got the question out. See, please come this way.
Lawyer had promised him that he would only get 20 years. Meach also
You know what I'm saying? If he was guilty of anything.
motion filed in 2009, he himself stated that his lawyer had promised him that he would only get 20 years. Meach also took this
They say it was.
opportunity to
They
pretty
say
much
if he was guilty of anything, it was associated with his brothers. By how? Like, that's,
blame everything that was going on his brother, denying any involvement and saying that if he was guilty of anything, it was just being the brother of Terry Flannery. With a guidelines range of 30 years to life, why would Meach be expecting less than 30? Now, before I move on to Tammy Cowens, I want to say that based on what I see and have here in front of me, Meach had already signed on to be a cooperator in 2007. So, for everybody asking where his cooperation agreement is, this is it. The statute governing Meach's plea agreement was Rule 11 C1C. This is not a plea agreement that everybody gets. Meach was given this type of plea agreement as a reward for his cooperation and agreeing to admit.
mm. So I guess they saying basically they can give him at least 20 years if you admit to whatever they want to give him, maxing out at 30. And on the supervised release, it's like they could basically max out his term that he out on the term he's supposed to be in there on supervised release.
Specifically to supervising 5 people named in the indictment and to being personally involved in at least 3 transactions. Being in this type of plea gave Meach the leverage to negotiate the life sentence off the table and limiting his sentence to between 20 and 30 years. Because Meach had this plea agreement already locked in since '07, he didn't have to sign a new agreement or create new terms once Tammy came along. He only had to put her to work. Enter 2012. Big Meech business partner and owner of his life rights, who is also working as a confidential informant, Tammy Cowens, contacts the DEA and informs them of an arrangement that Meech has put together between the individual he was just recently incarcerated with and his longtime friend, Cuffy Gatlin. Cuffy, completely unsuspecting because he and Meech are friends, and also because the government did such a good job of covering up Meech through the paperwork, indulges. Throughout this arrangement, Tammy is documenting the calls between Cuffy and the other individual so as to add credibility to her information. Cuffy
And I guess that's who Tammy is supposed to be, CS1. And based on information CS1 provided to the DA, Atlanta agent Flannery and Suarez became associates while both were incarcerated and for monetary gain. Flannery arranged through CS1, Tammy, I guess, confidential source one for Suarez to apply cocaine and multiple killing quantities to Gatlin, like, damn.
eventually gets indicted, and through litigation, details emerge that the confidential source on Cuffy's case is Tammy. Tammy is now upset with her FBI handlers because they assured her that her name would not be exposed. She contacts Meech and tells him her cover is blown, and he responds by saying he don't want his name in it. Never once reaches out to Cuff to disassociate himself, and never actually cuts Tammy off or reprimanded her for destroying his friendship with Cuff. In retaliation for being exposed, she contacts Cuffy's attorney and tells him that the agents lied in their probable cause affidavits and exposes some of their own underhand practices. Cuffy files a motion to suppress, and all of that information that Tammy possesses comes out on record, and we find ourselves here. I think the biggest lesson to be learned in this situation is that the streets don't love nobody. In my opinion, yes, Meech cooperated and was well aware of what Tammy was doing as well. All of the things he loved about the streets and all of the things he enjoyed ultimately led to his downfall. And his fight for freedom and life probably damaged his relationship with his brother more than we will ever know. He's now fighting to maintain his street reputation as
Excuse me, I just want to say this. I remember when all this was going on back in the day. And I remember they were always trying to get Buddy Life. Yeah, I remember they was like, man, we got 20 some years. Man, man, come on, you got this here, man. You feel me? Like it was a different life. You feel me? And, 20 some years afterwards, whole new life. And now look, you feel me? Like Buddy said, now he's fighting to save his street cred.
the clout from that will probably be his only legitimate way to earn income, which is itself a contradiction of everything he preached to his brother in that holding tank the day he told him that he was going to take the government's plea deal. I think Meech should use his platform to talk to troubled kids and explain that just like the Nicky Barnes, Frank Lucases, and all of those guys before him, they too will find themselves in that same position if they pursue a career in the streets. I also hope that this message reaches some of the brothers in the feds, the ones who go hard and stand on business, doing their best to keep the ones with no morals and integrity away. To those brothers, pay attention. Recognize that they are finding new ways to disguise the ones who sent to stir the chaos. I mean, when you look at the grand scheme of things, Meech was an informant disguised as a real one and was able to get two unsuspecting people who thought they were his friends to believe that they were doing business with him just so he could set them up to get himself out of trouble. That act of treachery is, in my opinion, more evil than the act of selling drugs. It take a special kind of evil to knowingly set your friends up to lose their freedom for life just to gain your own when they had no fault in your current situation at all. It just go to show you that when life is on the line, the gloves are off, whether it's loss of life through death or loss of life through freedom. When that time comes, it's every man for himself.
Hey guys, Grant Cardone here. For the last 10 years, I've been running what is today's largest, most successful business conference.
Yeah, I just want to leave it at that. Yeah, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. That's just crazy. I'ma just say, man, I don't know. I'm just gonna see what unravels. I would say this, like, Lilmeech, like, damn, bro, you want to supposed to fall for that thing, bro. Like, man, you really need to be around some better motherfuckers. Buddy, that ain't doing shit but you real shit just to get back that 50, bro. And they cost you your whole fucking career with this man. Like, damn, that shit was popping. Keep going to see what the fuck you feel me? EMF went to. You wanted to see when that motherfucker was climaxed. You feel me? That's just shit. You feel me? Damn, cat. You feel me? You gonna never supposed to let them niggas fuck up your bag, bro. Knowing them niggas did that, you only supposed to still be around them niggas, bro. Let alone being publicized. Like, that shit always fails. Anybody that's thinking about endorsement gonna think like, man, this nigga fuck him up. I'll come backstab you, some shit like that, bro. You feel me? I don't know. Maybe you feel me? Floyd gonna fucking hook you up, you feel me? Shit. Motherfuckers thinking like shit. Also, again, he would have been did that shit. You know? I don't know. Shit, I don't know. You never know, you feel me? Shit, but if, I'm gonna keep going down the rabbit hole, you feel me? Drop a like in the comment, you feel me? And tell me how you feel about the situation. Until next time, I see you then.